France. There's a story they tell about France, which is a little bit of a naughty story, and that is that when the world was created and France was made so beautiful, the other countries went to God and say, "Why did you put all these beautiful things in France and leave us a little bit short-handed?" You see, and so the Lord thought about this for a moment, and he said, "Well, in that case, I'll equal things up." He says, "I'll create the French." So now that's very unkind on the French because they've got they have remarkable qualities and but they're different. We're all different. I mean, the idea of thinking that we're all the same because we're human beings, because we look alike. I mean, this is one of the amazing mistakes of Europe. Europe will never work. You'll never make a German out of a Greek or a Norwegian out of a Portuguese. I mean, they're totally, totally different people, totally different approach to life. It's a failed experiment, and the beauty of Europe was in our differences. You can't just put everybody into one mold and expect them to react in the same way. Never.
Now, you're from Northern England, and we still talk about the North-South divide here. Is that true of France, North-South?
There's a distinct divide in France between the big cities and the country. There's been a demographic shift over the past, since World War II, to people moving to the big cities, the new professions, and certainly latterly with the information business, the computers and what have you. So young people tend to gravitate towards the major centers. So you've got this antipathy, which always did exist between rural France and urban France. And so that's the big difference. It's not so much north and south. There are regional differences where people try to protect their own individual interests. But no, I wouldn't say there's any antipathy between the north and the south. But then again, Keith, I'm not sure that I really felt there was one in England. As a northerner, when I went to the south, it was when I went in the army, I didn't feel that I was out of place. I felt quite at home in England. And England is too small, I think, to have truly in-depth regional animosities. And we're a fairly mobile population in Britain. So I never experienced what you just mentioned, the north-south divide. No, I feel that we talk a lot about that, but I've never really seen evidence of it.
Well, on a social level, personal level, I must say that I agree with you. That is, for instance, the mayor of Manchester and the mayor of Liverpool would say it's economic, and that's why they tried to build this super duper rail link. To try and what do they call it? The leveling up policy.
Yes.
And I mean, you've got an excellent train system in France, have you not?
The high-speed train system is very good. The local train system is a little bit wobbly. Well, not wobbly. It's very, very mechanically. It's very sound, but it's limited. And France, in terms of communications, both by rail and road, suffers from being north-south on a north-south axis. There are very few transversal routes, either by rail or by road in France. They're trying to rectify that with the motorway system, with some success. But if you want to go anywhere specifically, very often you've got to head up to Paris and then head back down again to wherever you want to go if you're wanting to cross the country. The problem is exacerbated certainly by the high central plateau, which is called the Massif Central, which is in the lower half of France. And that's difficult to get major roads through. It was quite a fight to get the A20, the autoroute 20 through there. So most lines of communication in France tend to come down from Paris towards Orléans, then split left and right to go either side of this huge geographical impediment, which you find the Massif Central further down. And then you get some transversal lines. But it's not easy to travel. You can travel north-south in France quite easily and very well with the rails and the road. But traveling across France is tricky. It takes a lot of time and some hilly country.
Yes, I can remember as a very young man. I was 21 years of age, I guess, traveling down and going through Grenoble.
Yes.
I was really quite fascinated by this town set in the mountains.
Oh, it is.
The Romans had built sort of fortresses way, way up. God, it would have defied even modern civil engineers. It's quite incredible and quite fascinating.
Oh, indeed, indeed, and of course, Grenoble is an amazing city to see with these huge rock formations. When you just wonder, nature went wild, and
Yes,
you just see
indeed.
a rock growing up out in the middle of a field, and by that I mean a rock that is 1,500 meters high and 1,000 meters wide. It's just sitting there in a field. It's not a stone; it's a huge rock, and several of them. Quite an amazing city, Grenoble, and the going through a bad time at the moment. Lots of crime, unfortunately,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah. So some of the major urban centres in France are suffering terribly from. There are lots of no-go areas. There are about 60 uh, at least no-go areas in major French cities where even the police can't go.
Really?
Oh, yes.
I mean, is that anything to do with what we were talking about earlier? That the police tend not to be practical anymore.
Well, the police, when I say no-go areas, the police can't go. They can go if they go in force. But if you had a couple of bobbies or gendarmes, as we call them, just wandered into these quarters, I mean, they're taking their lives into their hands. And they would either be chased out or if they try to defend themselves, they'd be the guilty ones for causing social unrest. And so, no, it's some of the city centres, or not city centres, city suburbs almost, in the major French towns have become no-go areas, and where the gangs rule, and it's funny in a way. Sometimes these drug gangs set up social institutions and help young people who in need of social care, and as they try to respectabilize themselves. But it's a weird sort of, it's almost a two-level society that's happening in some of the big cities, and particularly in big cities which have been taken over by I won't get into the right or left argument here, and into the social do-gooder type of mayor, the ecologists, and those people who want to provide social services and want everybody else to pay for it, and so there's very little discipline in these towns. It's going to be very difficult to bring these no-go areas back into mainstream life. I don't know how they're going to do it. In fact, without there being a very much of a swing to the right in politics, which of course is happening in Europe. There is a swing to the right in European politics, pretty much all over. France is headed down that track. There's a good chance that that Marine Le Pen will be elected next time around, or somebody like her, and they will either have to compromise on their values, of what they consider their values, or there'll be an almighty clash. And I think it could lead to a lot of social unrest in future years.
It's very interesting what you say, because I've been watching particularly Suella Braverman in Britain. don't know the lady well enough to know whether I would approve of her politics, but she is certainly outspoken and calling a spade, and a lot of things which people wouldn't talk about, sort of social issues which are just unsupportable. We mustn't put up barriers to stop people landing from little craft and so on.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of things that are upsetting the populace, but politicians are afraid to tackle, and she's tackling them. So whether she's going to be another Marine Le Pen, I don't have no idea. But
now, what was her name again?
Suella.
Suella Braverman. Oh yes. Oh yes. I know.
Yes.
Yeah, the Home Secretary. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it is interesting, isn't it? Is that in your country and mine or ours, it's the ladies that are being outspoken.
Well, that's right. And Suella Braverman, and of course, Priti Patel is the same. I think she's got the same mindset.
Yes.
Somebody who is more moderate, but just as firm, I think, is going to be Kemi. What's her name? Badenoch, is it? I forget.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I think she's probably the next leader of the Conservative Party when I view politics from this side of the water. But there's going to be a period of the Conservative Party in the wilderness, that's for sure.
Yes.
And even a more serious problem: will the Conservative Party survive the one that 1832 Peel and the rest of it? Will that political entity survive? And it's very doubtful if it will. If, for instance, Farage and a few more like him got behind Bryce and really provided a conservative, in big letters, alternative to what the conservative and small c conservatives, almost left-wing conservatives that are in power now, if they provide an alternative for the silent majority, it could be the end of the Conservative Party. That's my reading of the situation. Well, but again, I'm not an expert, but
it's very interesting.
See those dynamics at play.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting that 4 years ago in this district, it's only 100,000 people, so we won't read a great deal into it, but it was dominated by the Conservatives and had been for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. They don't exist. They were wiped out at the last election. Mm-hmm. So if that was reflected across the country, the Conservatives, as they are presently constituted, are in a tough place.
Well, one of the big mistakes we make, though, is we talk about the Conservatives, but we're not talking about conservative thinking.
That's right.
I think Britain as a nation has outgrown extreme socialism and has become a naturally conservative nation. There is a natural audience for conservative policies, but the Conservative Party that we have at the moment is not providing those policies. It's not listening to the people, and it will get thrown out, and rightly so. I mean, yes. A bunch of losers, as far as I can see.
Many parties have to go through a cleansing period, don't they?
Absolutely, and the Conservative Parliamentary Conservative Party is so out of tune with the conservative nature of the middle of the road voter, and not necessarily a right wing voter, but just a middle of the road voter. That they just lost it. They're not even close. I can't see any difference between the Socialist Party and the Conservative Party at the moment in Britain.
I mean, I can see a difference, but the difference isn't as great as the Conservative Party would like to think. And I think that your assessment, particularly looking at it without being involved in the local politics, as it were, is a very valid one, Harry. And I'm glad that we got onto this topic. But we have been going for an hour, so I think we must let you go back to your beer, even though it's.
Well, you're the one. You're the one with the beer. You're the one I saw with the beer. Yeah.
Now let's see. It's next week that you're not available?
And if I can move my medical appointment, maybe I could move that too. Medical appointment, I'll be available, but I'll let you know during the week. But certainly,
All
I'll
right,
be back
excellent.
the week after with the
If
young
not, then we'll
lady
see you.
from the tourist office.
Absolutely, we're looking forward to that.
Okay,
Okay, Harry.
Joe.
Thanks. It was a fascinating
Thanks.
morning,
Thank
and
you.
it's the sort of thing that I'm pleased that these sort of sessions turn into, because I think insight is one of the things that we can, through a small television station such as this, impart, and it is a very important element in any country's political and social and economic development. So, God bless you, my son.
Well, neither of us are experts. We're just simple lads who got to where we are.
That's right.
But we do have the advantage of having an outside view to bring into a more independent perspective, independent assessment of our country, of Britain,
and created from having experienced a large number of different societies and ways of doing things. Yeah,
I hope that we both, without bias in this, and I think that gives us a certain detachment, but a more accurate perception of what's happening in Britain.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
Harry, we'll talk to you next week, hopefully, but if not, the week after.
Okay, terrific. Talk to you soon. Bye. Bye, Keith.
Bye.
Bye.
There we go. And now we'll clear the decks, because Liza Page is up next, and here she is. So we take a break for about 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then we'll be back with Liza. So where are we? This is where we are. Yeah.